So the third module, we're going to do the acid fast stain. This is we only going to do a demo, which means we're not going to practice in the lab because we don't have microbacteria, any species. So we're going to do a lecture related to the lecture exam, also the lab exam, but we're not going to practice. So acid fast stain. Acid fast stain, first of all, this is for a very important group of bacteria called the Microbacterium. Why it is important? You know that Microbacterial Tuberculosis, which is we call TB. This is a dramatic infectious lung disease back in 1940 or 1950, which means before the antibiotics comes out. This is as severe as the coronavirus right now. People get this one, almost is damage of the lung area, is going to die before the antibiotics come in. Okay, so that's why it is a very risk infectious airborne disease. Now let's talk about this first of all. Microbacterial tuberculosis in the human being is caused TB, which is by tuberculosis. In the animals, is Microbacterium bovis. This is actually coming from the cow. Why we want to mention this? In the West Virginia area, we still allow you to using unpasteurized milk. So if the cow has you have eaten unpasteurized milk, which means raw milk. Very possible you're going to get contaminated with Microbacterium bovis. This one probably not going to have tuberculosis in the human being, have tuberculosis in the cow, but it will cause bone deformation, will cause a damage which is called a hunchback. Okay, remember that the cartoon movie talk about a hunchback. Okay, so that's a little bit of story. Now, what are the characteristics for Microbacterial tuberculosis? This bacteria have a very special structure of the cell wall. On the cell wall, they have a higher amount of mycolic acids. Mycolic acid. Because of this high amount of the mycolic acids, it will have a very waxy cell wall. And the mycolic acid is actually is a long unsaturated fatty acids. So it becomes a very waxy cell wall. So some of the dye cannot go inside. We need a special dye called a carbon fusion and with heat steaming. So this procedure is actually very similar to the endospore stain. We also rely on heat steaming. Because of the mycolic acids have a very waxy cell wall, the basic dye cannot go inside. So this is some of the story behind this. Now I want to mention about the TB a little bit is how we clinically diagnose it. Lots of you will go to graduate school or medical school, pharmacy school, vet school, so we talk about that a little bit. So first of all, before the people develop the TB, there are several steps to do the diagnosis. Number one is very productive cough for more than 2 to 4 weeks. Of course, accompanied by fever, fatigue, lose appetite of eating, all those kind of the symptoms. Then the patient is go to the hospital. You're going to do is X-ray test. After X-ray test, you see a very cloudy lung area. But the cloudy lung area does not mean you have tuberculosis. People have the cancer, they also have lung cancer, also have a cloudy area. So we're going to move on to the third step, called the Ppd test. This is called purified protein derivative. This is a skin test. Okay. You have one shot of the skin surface on the arm. After you have a Ppd test, 48 hours, if you have a swelling or like concave or some of the rash is more than 6 to 10 millimeter, we say it's Ppd test positive. But be careful. Some of you, if you are young, you have a BCG vaccine, you will be tested because you have antibody in your body. You may be also going to test the false Ppd test positive. So this is not really a determination, but if you have a Ppd test positive, you move on to number 4 steps. This step is we do acid fast stain. Okay, that's what we're going to do. If acid fast stain positive, we will say this guy is presumptive TB, which means this guy has to do treatment using antibiotics. Then you may have a question. After acid fast stain, at the end of the day, we have to verify it is TB, Microbacterial Tuberculosis. How are we going to do it? Why we don't do it right now? We mentioned in the lecture, the generation time, or we say doubling time of TB is very slow, is more than 24 hours. Is that right? The generation time for E. coli is very quick, it's about half an hour. So you're not going to do the cultivation very quick. The cultivation takes about a couple weeks even. So at this stage, what we're going to do, acid fast stain positive, we will say it's presumptive TB. We have to treat, use antibiotics, but at the same time, the sputum sample, we have to be prepared in some transport media. The transport media called Lowenstein Jason medium. We have to transport in the transport medium, then go to CDC reference lab. They have a database there. We'll do the further confirmation. Now, there is something talk about the sputum sample. You know the sputum, there's a lots of bacteria there. Tremendous amount. Some are good ones, some are bad ones, some are background flora. So usually the sputum sample, we have to do some pre-treatment. We use a very harsh NaOH, alkaline solutions to do digestion. Because we can remove background bacteria in sputum. Then we transfer them to the transport medium, Lowenstein Jason medium. Then we transfer to CDC reference lab. This confirmation usually taking at least 3 to 5 weeks, sometimes more than that. So therefore, we cannot wait for this confirmation. Let the patient sit at home. We have to do some of the treatment first. Okay? So this is the one knowledge for acid fast stain. But how are we going to do it? So let's say we're going to do it. Air dry heat fixing, they are the same. Now, what are some difference? Let's say you put a bacteria there. This is a Microbacterial Tuberculosis. Put it there. Same thing. We're going to do a flooding. This time we're going to flooding with carbon fusion. Okay. Then we do heat steaming. Heat steaming for 5 minutes. Then we have to do a decoloration. We need to use acid alcohol, which is 5% HCl, hydrogen chloride, hypochloric acids. Add 70% ethanol. This will be decoloration about 10 seconds. Then we do the counter stain with methylene blue. Okay, so that's a procedure how we do. Now, very similar to the endospore stain. Heat steaming, you can put a Bunsen burner on the surface, on the glass surface, back and forth, or you use hot, heated water bath at the bottom. Okay. Because we do not have Microbacterial tuberculosis in the bovis, so we're not going to do it in the lab. Sometimes we have a surrogate of Microbacterial tuberculosis. We call it a Microbacterial fili. Some of the lab we can do it, but we don't have it here, so we just skip this. But you only need to know is what I write here for these basic knowledge about the tuberculosis. Okay, be careful because of macrolic acids. It's at a very waxy cell wall, so we have to use carbon fusion and with heat steaming. Okay, so this is the end of this section. We have 3 modules right here is gram stain, endospore stain, and acid fast stain. If the school opens, we will do gram stain and endospore stain on September 29th. If not, we'll have other plans. So wait for my email, put on the eCampus or send it to you. Okay, so thank you. Okay.